Hello, everyone, and welcome to PR Connections Radio with Guy Dawson. I am Guy Dawson, and I am your host. And I am here with a good friend of mine, a man who I haven't seen in quite a few years, but we have stayed in contact since he brought George Foreman onto my radio show probably a decade ago. His name is Brent Bowers, and he is a very, very good friend of a former world champion and boxing legend, George Foreman. He is his sparring partner, and we're going to take about an hour today, and we're going to talk about his experiences with George, and he's got a lot of fantastic stories to tell. So I hope you will all enjoy this interesting interview with Brent Bowers, good friend and sparring partner to world champion George Foreman. Welcome, Brent.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was also cut man and chief second at several of his fights too.
Yes, I know that your background with George Foreman goes way back. So how about we'll start at the beginning. How did you
Okay.
meet George Foreman?
Okay. In 1986, I've gotten, I've been getting heavy. I go in boxing, fight amateurs. And I was 29 years old, and wife said, "Brent, you need to lose some weight. Y'all get back into boxing." So I said, "Well, this time let's go pro. I'm gonna try and turn professional." So I started training, and there at League City. I originally started at a small club at, believe it or not, little Hitchcock High School. We had a boxing coach. He was a New York State heavyweight champion. He done a little program there at our school, and I got in it. And then, of course, he only done it during the Golden Gloves. And that year, that was '71. We won the team trophy for the most. We won one of the most fights for the amateurs. That was something, the first time too. For us to even enter the Golden Gloves, the school did. And went on from there. I started training at League City because Hitchcock, he only done it during the Golden Gloves. We start like in December, and Golden Gloves were in February then or January. In other words, we only trained a few months. So I go over at League City and start boxing full time, my brother and I. And we just boxed off and on until, and then in 19, so I'd come back. I was even asked to go represent the U.S. against the Russian team once, but I had a wife and kids. I couldn't take off 2 or 3 months and go do that. And I still came back to boxing. I decided to turn pro. Well, I'm training one day, and one of the officials, Neil Young, came in. He said, "Brent, George Foreman looking for a sparring partner." And I said, "Man, George Foreman." Yeah, I remember when he won the title. I was in high school, only weighed 165 pounds. Now I'm up to 240, and I'm a heavyweight now. So, but if you told me back then I'd be going to spar George Foreman, I told you were nuts. But just what happened. What happened then is I went down there to see George, and my trainer Walt Haley went with me, and of course my original one Hitchcock, his name was Jim Riccio. Walt Haley went with me, so I go down there. Of course, I just mainly went to meet George and see everything. Well, George came out. He weighed 300 pounds plus, and he was playing a song, "Sweet Chariot, coming forth to carry me home." So I'm going to spar this guy. Yeah, sure didn't like that song going on, but he signed my book. I had a nice book, and we talked just a moment, and we started sparring. I stayed on George. What George would do is, though, he would push me off. He'd hit my shoulders. But he never would hit me. He'd hit my shoulders, my arms. Now I come back all bruised all over me, and he never hit me. George really did not want to hit nobody. Really didn't want to come back and fight. Uh, I don't mean to keep talking. I know you had any questions for me right now or anything, uh, guy.
Yeah, so you guys, I mean, did you guys just hit it off right off the bat when you met? Tell me about what it was like when you guys were striking up your friendship. I mean, you were
Well,
sparring partners, so you guys were really like not right.
yeah. Well, what happened though too is, see, like I said, George didn't want to hit nobody, and George was broke. He had no money. What happened was, they asked me to come back and they could give me gas money. So I live 40 miles from the gym. So I'm a pipe fitter out of a pipe fitters local union 211. At that time, I was unemployed after all my unemployment. So, heck, I meet George Foreman, do things. And of course, I wasn't getting hit, but I was coming home with bruises all over me. Well, his trainer was Charlie Shite. He was a former welterweight champion. He taught me, says, "Brent, we got to get this guy to start punching. The way he done it, he said, I'm going to teach you what Rocky Marciano would squat down and punch. What he done when George started reaching for me, I would squat down, I'd hit him. Well, then he got mad. Then he started punching back. So that's how we got George to start hitting somebody. Just had to, that's how we got him start punching. And there's so many stories to tell you, sir. That's how we got going on the comeback. And then uh, I guess the best thing to do would be is to go in his first fight. You see, that was in 1986. That was July of 1986. So I was going to turn 30 September. Well, I thought I'd turn pro then. And what they said was, well, Brent, what we'll do, we'll put you on our fight cards with him. Well, it turned out that didn't work out. George wanted me in his corner. Start working his corner and everything. And he paid me very well. So, when we start making money. So it worked out better for me, when I wish now I would have fought now, but that's too late to worry about that now. But his first fight was March 9th. We went to Sacramento, California, fought Steve Zowski. Well, to be honest with you, George did not want to hurt nobody. He really didn't want to fight. He was broke. One funny thing I want to tell you, when I first met him, he's a preacher. He had his own church that he built. It is a nice little church, and probably about 70 people attend. I went there. I started going, and what was funny, here's a guy. He's really broke. He didn't even have a credit card. He used to use my credit card. And of course, he always repaid me with a check. Always wrote me a check back. He just had checking account or cash. He guess his credit got bad. He couldn't have no credit card, which was fine. It didn't bother me. I mean, they always paid me back. The funny part is I go to church and George gets his plate out. He says, hey, the first commandment is to help your fellow man, your relative. You got a relative or a friend that needs a light bill. I said, pay that light bill. Don't put the money in this collection plate. I laughed because I told him, I said, man, you got on TV telling that. The other church would put out Hitman on him, wouldn't they? They'll give you help your friends and family first, So I thought that was pretty unique. But when we went to when he fought Steve Zowski, what is he got a percentage of the gate? I don't know how much it was. They had a pretty good crowd, but George, let's see, the record shows he stopped in the fourth round. Well, George actually hurt the guy almost every round, but George wouldn't finish him off. George, he really hoped the referee would stop the fight so he wouldn't really hurt the guy. Well, finally, the referee did in the fourth round, and everybody was disappointed because they want to see this guy get knocked out. They come and see a knockout. George Foreman, but he didn't deliver that time. So they were kind of upset about that.
And so a lot of people don't realize, Brent, that George Foreman really had two careers. I think a lot of people more know George Foreman for his comeback in a lot of ways than they knew he was a ferocious fighter back in the 70s. So when you're talking about him not wanting to hit people, that wasn't George Foreman in his earlier career. He was definitely a hit guy.
Well, when he got religion, let me go back. They told me a lot of things happened. He believes they drugged him before the Ali fight. The story about that is his trainer. I'm trying to think of his name. I'm sorry, I just lost it. Concentrate on. But he's like a father to him. Always giving. This guy helped him go to the Olympics and everything. As a matter of fact, he was the trainer of Sonny Liston, and then George met Sonny Liston, trained before he went to the Olympics. Well, his name was Dick Sadler. Dick always gave him water mixed with honey. He said, "Man, this tastes like medicine." And he goes, "Dick, it's George." Dick said, "George, it's the same water I always give you." Well, he drank it. Well, he thinks that he really believed it was. So he fired Dick after the fight. Didn't have nothing to do with him. And George told me 20 years later, he decided maybe he was wrong. So he flew out to California where Dick lived at. And he was in a nursing home there. He said he walked up on a big porch and Dick was sitting there with several other gentlemen. And he sat down there with him and Dick did not even know who he was. So he'll never know the truth. He'll always believe that that's what happened to him. And what I've seen of George is, what people don't realize is, George is the hardest training fighter in the world. Nobody trains hard as George. They might be better, but nobody trains. He stands flat-footed now. and he punches that bag, punch after punch. I've seen him do that 10 rounds. And he pick you up while he's hitting the bag. He picked you up. You know what I'm saying? So, to me, they said the rope-a-dope. The rope-a-dope wouldn't have tired him out. Now, there was no, what the mob used to do, they couldn't buy it. They would put morphine in your water. What was strange was the reason they found out, I don't remember the guy's name, but he actually died in the ring. And the reason they found out, they done an autopsy, he had morphine. That's how the funny and the strange part is this guy died was in the 8th round. Well, George got stopped in the 8th round. Supposedly morphine, you're strong, it brings your energy down. You understand me? In other words, it slowly. So if you got a guy that can really punch, if I'm fighting you, I know you've given him this water. I'm gonna block, rope a dope till that medicine wears on. I'm just telling you what I would do. So I would go after him. I'm just telling you, but George doesn't know if that's true or not. But what was funny was Dick Sadler's son. Somehow he found out my phone number and called me, and he told me that, and I'd never mentioned this to nobody, hardly ever. But he actually called me and said that his dad did not put anything in his water, which I didn't know why he called me for. But somehow he got my number and seen who I was. But I never even mentioned that before, hardly. But I'm just letting you know. So that's what his son called. His son actually called me on the phone. I assume what his son told me was that he did not put anything in George's water. But George always believed that.
And so what was it like? I mean, I remember back in the late 80s when he was just starting to make his comeback, and we used to watch his fights on USA Network. I don't know if you remember, and he was.
I remember that perfect. That's what I done. I was a kid. I know.
USA Network was, featuring George Foreman, and I mean, a lot of people thought they just thought this guy was crazy, and that there was no way he was older, he wasn't in shape like he was when he was back in the 70s. But here's this guy that's trying to become champion of the world, and he talked about it. He just kept telling everybody, I'm going to be champion of the world again. I'm going to be champion of the world again. So you being his sparring partner and being his friend and being around him during this time, tell me what that was like. What gave him the confidence that he was going to be able to do that? Because no one else believed, including me, that would ever happen.
Well, I believed it because I was there with him. I seen what the guy could do. You got to remember, he weighed 315 pounds. The way he started his comeback was his wife drove him 5 miles from the house and he'd walk home. It was funny. His wife said, George, you sure you can make it that far? That's how he started his comeback. And then, okay, he has no money, but for about a year, until the first fight, all I got was gas money, to come work with him. Well, he had no money for nobody else. What he done is, okay, so I get in the ring, and I throw a lot of punches. People say, man, look at me, I'm punching, I'm throwing away. I mean, I'm punching in power. In other words, I throw everything like George says with bad intentions. That's the way you're supposed to fight. Well, what was funny was, okay, George does not even does not wait a minute between the rounds. You know that. In other words, any other people they spar 3 minutes and they get a minute rest. George doesn't do that. What he done was, since he had no money, he had his lawyer who weighed about 180 pounds. He had another friend. And they had friends. They'd come in for the 1 minute. They'd come in there and punch at George. He wouldn't hit them, but he would just catch and move. So then I get back in. That's how he done it. Can you imagine that? Just letting your friends come in to punch at you, and you just move around and block. That's what he did. And here I am. I'm punching away. Of course, he's hitting me back. And that's what he done. And then, I'm just telling you, I knew. And then I seen how he hit that heavy punch at. Nobody does that. He throws more punches in one round than most fighters do in 3 rounds. And you're talking about doing 10 rounds without stopping. He'll do the 1 minute rest when he's doing that, but 10 rounds, punch after punch. It's just incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, it was just really interesting to watch. Like I had mentioned, Brent, at first, it didn't seem like it was possible, but as he kept moving up, he became a really big attraction in boxing. And of course, I know he was really known in the first half of his career. He wasn't as outgoing, and he didn't connect with his fans the way that he did in the second half of his career. What do you think changed about George? Was it just that he was saved and he got into his religion? What was it that made him a different type of person in his second career than in his first career?
Well, definitely it was religion. You know, where his brother and everybody said he was a real mean guy, didn't talk to nobody. Even George told him, my best friend was a dog. He thought nothing of people. After he got saved, you know, I'm sure you've heard the story about that, haven't you? Where he
I haven't
thought,
ever, no, I don't know if I've ever heard the story about how he actually got saved. Maybe you
oh,
can
let me
share
tell
that.
you, after the fight with Jimmy Young, he goes to the dressing room. He thought he died. I'm telling you what, he said he died. He was put on a cross. He went to hell and everything. And he was begging. He was begging, man, please, somebody help me. Lord, help me. And he finally, he says, like a giant hand just grabbed and pulled him out. So he's jumping up yelling, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. And everybody's trying to hold him down. And he says, I'm saved. And he didn't even know what kind of Bible did he. Told one of his friends, give me one like your mother had. That's how much he didn't know nothing about the Bible, even though his mother did try to teach him and do things. He just didn't want to do it. And then that's really how it changed. And he said that people said, well, you were hallucinating the fight. He said, yeah, but he said, but what about the smell? It was the most horrible smell I've ever had. How can you tell someone hallucinate when you had that smell? So he says they're never going to tell him different. And he's told me, I like to joke and kid, and things do happen. He's told me about his dreams. The Lord talks to him in his dreams, and I believe him. You know, if I didn't, I wouldn't tell him, but I do believe him. But one time we come in the train, I said, Champ, I had a dream about you last night, which I did. He said, well, what was it, Brent? I said, man, I dreamed, in Texas Monthly, he told him he's going to die at 118 years old. I don't know why I dreamed. I dreamed I was one of his pallbearers when he died when he was 118 years old. So that made me about 111. But he really wanted to know about my dream, because it was him.
So you guys are both going to live to be really, really old men, right? If you listen to your
I hope so.
dreams.
It sounds like it. I know I'd live this long. So, but you got to remember, though, to me, George is the greatest fighter ever because how could you come back and do all this? And you got to remember now, he fought Evander Holyfield. Now, Evander Holyfield knocked out Mike Tyson. He couldn't even knock George Foreman down. On his comeback, George Foreman never got knocked down. Never got knocked down. People don't realize that. Never got knocked down.
Yeah, George was, again, it was a freak of nature to watch something like that, something that you've never seen in boxing and you'll probably never see again is for someone to recreate their career like that and come back and ultimately beat a young champion in his prime to take the belt back. Tell me about when he won the championship. Obviously you were there.
Yeah, I was there at the fight. It was really fun being there. You knew the odds were 3.5 to 1. Now George been up, so I did bet some money on George, and his trainer gave me some money to bet on too. But when I made his bet, it was only 3 to 1. In other words, at the beginning of the few days before the fight, it was 3.5 to 1. So everybody been betting on George. So they lowered the odds to 3 to 1. So I'm in line, and there's about, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people in line. There's only one line to pick up your bet there in Las Vegas. And what was funny was this guy comes walking by, and he goes, "Oh, y'all must bet on old George." This guy said, "Well, you stupid idiot! So you think we'd be in this line and we'd bet on Michael Moore? It was line to bet on." So it was a lot of fun being in Las Vegas at that time.
Yeah, just a monumental feat that he pulled off, and I think that really cemented his brand. What I saw with George, Brent, was that he's one of the few fighters who got beyond just being a great fighter to where he was actually able to create a brand, beyond boxing, along with him being that champion. But his brand just lives on, and it seems like once he became champion again, that was the thing that really, really built his his brand again, and then he became very popular.
Oh yes, and then like I said, when I started with him, I told friends and people, they laughed. Big old fat guy, and then all the news people poor bad mouth him, and he'd say. One reporter told him, said, "Well, George, is it true you won't fight a guy unless he gets out of the hospital and off a respirator a week?" He said, "That's a lie. I said, he'll be off at least 2 weeks." Everything they said. And he said, "What if you can't knock him out? Why you can't knock him out?" And he said, "Well, then I'll belly bump him down." Everything he said. I want to show you. Can you see this picture here?
Yes.
You see how happy George looks?
Yes.
You see the robe he's wearing?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that was after a workout. That was in Oakland, California. Now, what George would do is, after workout, we'd always go eat. Well, we're there after workout with all these news reports. Well, George would talk to them. If they asked questions, he'd say, "We're there for 2 hours." This guy asked questions for 2 hours. And the next day, and we're all hungry wanting to eat, so we got to wait 2 hours for this guy to get done with his question and gets done, so we go eat. The next day in the news article, all he said was, "George looked poor and he had a hole in his rope." That was all. That's all he said. Look, and I said, "Champ," I always called George. I said, "Champ, why in the world do you even mess with him?" He says, "Brent, as long as they don't write, I raped or killed somebody to keep my name in the news. I don't care what they write about it." That's what he told me. And then we know what was good too, though, is a lot of times, George spoke at a lot. He went to a lot of prisons and spoke. We were in Sacramento. It was either Oakland, Sacramento, the first or second fight. We went to a federal penitentiary, and I was going to show you. Hang on a second. We went to another one. Went to a youth prison. I know this one was in Las Vegas here. Went to a youth prison in Las Vegas, about 50 miles out. This was a picture I took of them, of the youth, and we ate dinner with them and everything. It was really nice. Just give you an idea of some of the things George did when we went. But at the prison in California, he's in an auditorium. There's about 500 people in there, and he gets done. Of course, we're on a stage about 4 foot tall. Of course, they have 2 sets of steps, on each side. Not, just a little step where 2 or 3 people go up. Well, he signed autographs, maybe 10, 15 minutes. You couldn't sign everybody's autograph. And then they said, "Clear the stage." What was funny was it wasn't just walk down steps. They jumped off that stage. I mean, when they said clear the stage, they cleared the stage. And then what was funny, all the backs were to it. And the prisoner and the guards up there get George's autograph. You hear the prisoners bad mouthing the guards, kind of saying how sorry they were, but you couldn't see who was saying that. It was kind of funny. But like I said, George couldn't sign everybody's autograph.
Yeah, George Foreman definitely, I think, in the minds of a lot of people, became an inspirational figure, Brent, after having this second career. And then he just seemed like and he still does, just such a positive role model. And it expanded beyond boxing. When I interviewed him before, when you were on the radio, I really appreciated the opportunity that you gave me to interview him many years ago. But one of the things that surprised me that he said in that interview was with the George Foreman grill, which, I mean, he is, just legendary, known for that George Foreman grill. And he talked about the fact that he couldn't get anyone to invest in the George Foreman grill. Did you know anything about that?
Well, no, he didn't talk to me about it, but no, he told me he's the one who wanted to. And he was surprised it sold that big. Yeah, he thought it would.
Yeah, it was just really a shock to me that nobody thought that was going to work out. I mean, and boy, the millions and millions of dollars that the people who did invest in that, it's just, it was an incredibly smart investment for them.
Right. It turned out to be the number 2 selling appliance in the world. Only thing sold more than it was the refrigerator.
Yeah, just phenomenal. I've been having those since I was in my 20s, Brent.
It's so nice, if you're in a hotel or something, you cook with it, where you couldn't cook or anything else. No, it worked out pretty well. And I've still got one. I've still got a big one here at the house myself.
Yeah, pretty much everyone would say that.
Did you post any of the pictures I had sent you on like me sparring George?
I did.
You
I
posted, yeah,
posted
see,
something in the
let's see
ring,
that.
but I
Oh,
didn't
you
post
posted
that picture. But I do have that.
Yeah, yeah. That's in Las Vegas. What happened is, boy, I nailed George in that picture. What was funny was, see, then we started making money. I was getting 1,500 a week sparring George, and uh, he cut my pay $300 that week. I know I had done it, but we're in there sparring. We get going, and George said, "Brent, you hit me." So I hit him. I hit him. But see, George never gets you back. So you always lure it because after getting good, he always waits a week later. A week later, he got me good. He got me with a double right hand, knocked me down. Of course, he says, "I'm sorry, Brent," but that was a payback for
Yeah. So
what
here
was
you
bad
guys are.
was what was bad was after working, everybody come up wanting my autograph. I said, "Oh," and then George looked at everybody wanting my autograph.
Right, you guys are these good friends, but
Oh
then
yeah,
you're his sparring partner at the same time. So part of your
oh
job, right, as a sparring partner is to get him ready for the fight. And
yeah. Well, George never looked at tape, but Charlie and I would as trainer. And I'm good about imitating fighters. Matter of fact, George complimented me on several times. I imitated the guy just right. That he caught the guy, knocked him out because of what I had done. Yeah. And then I have I don't know if you can see. I have a nice letter I've always kept for a long time. Can you see the letter? Can you read it?
I can read a little bit of it.
I was gonna read it. It says, "Greetings." See, remember I was paid nothing but gas money. Then at this And then we start making money. It was after the Cooney fight. Well, let me go in that first. I better do that first. When he fought Jerry Cooney, George got $1 million payday. Well, his brothers and friends said, "George, don't fight Jerry Cooney." So they're giving Jerry Cooney $2 million. They're only giving you one. George said, "I don't care what they give Jerry Cooney. I'm getting my $1 million." And his brothers was making nothing. Making $1,000, 2,000 a fight. The first television fight he got 10,000 for it. But I mean that was no money. When you got everybody else to pay and everything else to do. But I'm just telling you, said, "I don't care what they pay Jerry Cooney. I'm getting my $1 million." But after that fight, so he sent me he he said, greetings and happy New Year to you and your family. Hope that this letter finds you and your family in the best of health. I'm writing to wish you a happy New Year and remind you as how much important you are to me and my staff. Enclosed, you will find a token of my gratitude and my deepest appreciation. Again, thanks for all that you have done for me. I look forward to working with you in the new year. Let's get this year off on the right foot. If I can assist you in anything, please feel free to call me, either Nancy or me. As Nancy was his niece that handled all the money. So
Yeah, I guess it
yeah,
must be. I guess you would have to experience what it's like being around an iconic figure like that and being his
yes,
friend. And really, these stories that you tell, Brent, I mean, I've always appreciated hearing because most of us don't really get that kind of behind the scenes information like you have. Someone you think of George Foreman, again, you really think of what he became, but all the steps that he had to take, like you're sharing here, to make that comeback.
yes, I was going to show you my
Around
heavyweight.
him knows these stories.
Yes, sir. I'm going to show you my heavyweight boxing ring championship ring he gave me. Can you see it? All right, world heavyweight champion. It's built like a championship belt. And then this side, it's got George Foreman and when he won the title each time. And the other side's got my name in his record when he won a title. I was on a show called Treasure Hunters Roadshow. They had a collector. Now George told me he paid 10,000 for the ring. Six of us got a ring, and so he paid 10,000 for the ring. The guy offered me $30,000 for my ring, and I told him, well, if he had another zero on, he could have my ring. He wouldn't have another zero, so I still got my ring.
And so there's a movie coming out, Brent. I wasn't aware, but you had mentioned to me when we talked recently, a George Foreman movie is set to come out. What do you know about it?
Well, I don't know really anything. I really don't. I hadn't heard from George, but I said, George, I said, I don't know if I'm even in the movie. I said, if I am, I said, who's playing me? And he didn't say that. But I said, I did tell him, I said, I'm telling everybody the guy that plays Thor is playing me. But, that's what I tell all my friends and family. Of course, I tell them, I don't know. I don't know if I'm in it. You know how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I haven't heard very much about the film that's coming out, but I had always been wondering when someone would come up with a biopic about him because I mean, what a phenomenal story that he has um, in these two
Well, one
careers.
thing I want to tell you too, I'm telling you what, George's brother, Sonny, he's passed away several years ago. He was an equipment dancer. He told me a lot of stories about when George fought in Zaire. He said they cleaned the country up. If you was a known criminal, they put you to death. I mean, if you was a robber or a thief, they put you to death. He said, Brent, you can put your suitcase in the middle of the lobby. A week later, still be sitting there at the same place. You didn't have to worry about anything being stolen when you were in Zaire. And then George, he's the one who started Don King off. He just had to have a black promoter, and he chose Don King. And he wished he had done that now. What I believe, I could be wrong with that. Turned out
I
Don
did
King
not
was the
know
guy.
that.
He said Don King was the guy he thought he was. And just trying to tell you some of the things his brother told me happened in the past, which I wasn't involved with at the end, but that's what I've been told.
Yeah. So nowadays, George, of course, he's this worldwide figure. You see him on TV. I know I see him doing a lot of commercials nowadays for these companies that he represents. But I guess you and him, you still spend a little time together. He still lives in
Oh, yes,
Houston,
sir.
right?
I try to attend his church when I can. It's just I'm getting older, and I just hate driving that 50 miles one way. But I should go more often. I'm going to try to. I was going to show you some pictures I had. This is George. This is Coach Foreman. Can you see it okay? That's me. And see, he's training the middleweight that I'm sparring, Bobby Cook, the little guy, the
Hmm.
middleweight. He's one on the left. I mean, I'm on the right. He's telling me what to do and telling Bobby. So he's actually training Bobby Cook, the middleweight. He had me double duty. I had to spar him and his middleweight. So I had to double up on that. As in Alaska. And then, hang on just a second. Uh, this was, in, he used to, until I got a lot better, he couldn't take that headgear off. But he used to, like right before the week of the fight, he would take his headgear off and let me punch at him. That was in Oakland, California. But after I started really getting good, he would take the headgear off. But he'd take it off like the week before the fight to work on some things. And then what was nice is, you got to meet a lot of celebrities. I even met Donald Trump. He's the one who promoted the fight when he fought Vander Holyfield. He came down to the dressing room, him and Marlon Maples and Kevin Costner. When they come down to the dressing room, all you seen was Marlon Maples. She was so beautiful. Then you realized who she was. You didn't see Trump or Kevin Costner. You just seen her when they first came down. Then you realized who she was. And then what was it? We got to go like in Alaska. We got to go to the reindeer farm. Just showing you petting reindeer. I mean, what was nice is we went on these trips, got to do a lot of things. And this is just some of the celebrities I met. This is George Bell, the tallest living American. He's 7'8". Now,
Wow.
he's a deputy sheriff, retired deputy sheriff in Virginia. And can you imagine being in dark alley and they send this guy in to get you and just rob somebody? Huh? And then, I just and then this is Gene Hackman. Most of them actors are really short, boy. Gene Hackman, he's not a little guy. Doesn't seem. That was when he fought Evander Holyfield in Atlantic City.
Yeah,
Just sit there and
fantastic
show you.
actor, Gene Hackman.
And then this is, I think this was George's 41st birthday party. That's one of the pictures I had. He's with his, and that's George's sister-in-law. That was his brother's Roy's wife. Got his crown on. That was at his mother's house. And then I want to show you one more here I had out. This is for the Cooney fight. He had Mike the Giant White. See me and Archie Moore, then Roscoe Hill, then Mike the Giant White, then Charlie Shipes, the trainer, and then Dan Murphy. Here's a heavyweight. I was a training camp for the Cooney fight. And then this was at his 30 years of ministry work. This is my wife and I with George. It's 30 years of ministry work. And then one more picture, and I won't show everybody no more picture. I got her. This is what his championship belt. This is at the. This is at his 30-year ministry. That's my wife was. I love it. Too light. It was okay. I'm sorry.
There you go. Wow.
That's WBA. Yeah. All right. I'll show you all a few pictures. And can we briefly touch about Charlie Shapes? The
What
trainer.
was that?
I want to talk about Charlie Shipes, the trainer. Okay, see, George could not find nobody to train him. Nobody, they'd laugh behind his back. These top trainers, they wouldn't give him the time of day. I mean, he talked to a bunch of them. So he goes, Charlie Shipes was the welterweight champion. Well, they were friends before, but Charlie was a millionaire. But he became a major. He got on cocaine. He was a major drug distributor in California one time, legal drugs. Well, he wound up. In prison, and he said he lost everything. So one of his friends said that he had a piece of land in L.A. sold for $1 million back in the early '70s. So don't tell what it'd be worth now. And they took everything. His wife turned evidence against him. She got to keep his home. But he said everybody deserted him. So nobody even wouldn't even send him pack cigarettes. No. Well, George goes down to the federal penitentiary in Bastrop, Texas. And he goes in there and Charlie says, we want to talk to him about training when he got it. He's getting out for it. And Charlie said, man, he told George that, man, he's just a growing boy. He can win the title. He said, pumped him up really, really good. But he said, hell, Brent, I had nowhere to go. Man, I need to go somewhere. Nobody. And he really encouraged George to go ahead and fight and come back, and he needed the help too. Well, what was funny was he's on 10 years probation. We're here in Houston. He has a black pro officer, and so he goes to this pro officer and says, "Hey, we're going to go to Canada." This was in Canada. Was going to Canada. Oh, yeah, forgive me. I got to put my glasses on. I'm getting old. Oh, it was in July of 1990. So we're going to go to Canada. And so he go ask this black pro officer, says, I need your permission to go to Canada. He says, I'm not, you're a felon in you ain't going to Canada. I don't care if you work for, you remember football player Chuck Foreman?
I do.
He played for Minnesota Vikings, running back. He goes, I don't care if you work for Chuck Foreman. He said, okay. So he goes back and tells George. Well, George still has friends in government. So this pro officer calls him back 2 days later and says, it wasn't Charlie, that was Mr. Shipes. You need to come see me. So he says, first thing he says is, you sick George on me, didn't you? He goes, hey, you know his name right here last week. It was Chuck Foreman. So he did give him permission. What was funny is then, when you went out of the country, there was 2 planes ahead. There was like 600 people ahead of us, maybe. We go get off the plane. They're waiting on them. When we get off the plane, they take our bags and they check them. Of course, nothing was in them, but they were there checking their bags.
Yeah, amazing stories, Brent. Phenomenal stories.
I got one more good one to tell you. You know, George changed the rules in New Jersey on if you get hit with knocking your mouthpiece out. What happened is he fought Carlos Hernandez. Let me check the date on this one. That was in, and if y'all and you listeners get a chance, come look up the fight. He fought Carlos Hernandez. That was in Atlantic City, June 26th. That was 1988. Well, then the rules were if you got your mouthpiece knocked out, uh, they didn't stop the fight. You continue fighting. Well, George, it was he knocked Carlos Hernandez out in the fourth round. The third round, he knocked his mouthpiece. Well, George could have knocked the guy out easily. He didn't do it. George would not hit the guy because he knocked his mouthpiece. He didn't have no mouthpiece. This guy was really, man, he was hitting. This guy get punched. He was trying to knock the boy. He was coming after George. George did not hit him one time. And you go back and look at the fight. And so after the next round, though, he got his mouthpiece in. George could count to 1,000. You know. And what was funny was there's so much funny stuff about that stuff. Afterwards, I asked George why didn't he hit him. He said, I'm man, I could 30 years now I'll be preaching this guy tells his grandson, this is the guy that knocked my teeth out. You know, so he said, I wasn't gonna do that. And then right after that, New Jersey changed the rules whereby they do stop the fight. And then if you watch the next fight, George fights Atlantic City, he fights Jerry Cooney. Well, he knocked Jerry Cooney's mouthpiece out in the first round. They immediately stopped the fight and put his mouthpiece back in. But George, they changed the rules because of what George did. I thought it was great of him to do that. You know, it takes a pretty decent person knowing that somebody's trying to knock your head off, not to knowing you had him out and would not hit him because his mouthpiece was down. That's just the kind of person George is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his reputation is just it's just wonderful to see how he had this opportunity to remake himself, Brent. And again, I really appreciate all the time, you know, we've had to share stories, and now you got to share a lot of stories about George with this audience out here. And I know a lot of people are big fans of his, and so I really appreciate you dropping by today to give us a little bit of nostalgia about one of the greatest champions in the history of boxing.
Okay, I want to add one more thing. My son was involved in an accident several years ago. He was only 7 years old at the home at the time. Well, his best friend had died. Of course, my son was okay. He was all right. And George says, Brent, you need to take that boy to Disney World. That was back in 1990. And he paid for my son and I, my daughter, to go to Disney World and everything. And he had to pay somebody else to spar him while I was gone. You know, so that was super. Man, you can't beat a friend like that. And caring a person like him.
Yeah, real giver. And I know that, like you had mentioned, one of his goals was he wanted to build a big church for coming back, that was the main focus that he had. And he, I guess he received his blessings for his contributions.
Well, he did. Now, you know, he's got a real nice church. If anybody wants to tell him, they can come down there on Sunday. It's right there. If they know anything about Houston, it's by Intercontinental Airport, not far from Intercontinental Airport. It's a nice church he built. But the thing of it is, he had a smaller church and he had it torn down. He built this one. But in the smaller church, he had told he needed $1 million. He prayed. Of course, nobody knew he was praying this. He needed $1 million to pay everything going back. He said the good Lord blessed him, gave him $2 million because he had to pay taxes. He didn't realize he really needed $2 million. But, you know, if I'd prayed in that church and got $2 million, I don't think I would have tore that church down. That's my thing. I would have kept that church there. But he does have a beautiful, and when you come in, his family, relative, everybody's so nice to you. Afterwards, you can get your picture taken with George. He was glad talking, and he every time past play, he said the same thing. Hey, if your family, friend, relatives need help them first. I'll put nothing in this plate. So he's not asking you for your money. Even when he was broke, he didn't ask you for your money.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for stopping by, Brent. We really appreciate you sharing some great stories about George, and looking forward to his upcoming movie. And and know that you're enjoying yourself in your retirement. You got, you really are a part of the history of boxing.
Yes,
Being
sir.
tied into George, it's just a wonderful thing.
I want to have one last thing that tickled me was with George. You know, I helped train his son, and I was even the spar partner. Now, you know, I'm an older guy. I'm 55 now. And of course, what it is, George, and I throw a lot. Look, I'm throwing a lot of punch. I'm coming at you. I'm punching you. And George says, Brent, you knock my son down, I'm gonna give you $10,000. Said I'm write you a check. Every workout. And of course, he wouldn't let his son hit me because I'm an old man. So I got my headgear on, and I'm throwing everything but the kitchen sink. I never could knock his son down. That's why I believe it.
You 10,000. Huh?
I'm gonna write you a check, 10 grand, man. Just knock it down. so George pretty rough on his boy.
Missed out on that 10,000, huh, Brent?
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I'm coming in, I'm throwing everything but the kitchen sink.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Brent. We have to have you come back and talk about a different set of stories, maybe again sometime soon.
Well, we can talk. You know, I did go, cause with the help of George, I went to China, worked with the Chinese heavyweight boxing champion.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have you come back and talk about your fighter over there in China. I know we've had some discussions about him.
Then we talked about his son. You know, his son. We had him 18-0 with 17 knockouts, and he quit on us. I don't know what happened. His son I think, could have been heavyweight champion of the world, but we'll never know, I guess, unless he does like his dad, decides to come back.
Yeah, that's interesting that he has a son. I know you had told me you had a Chinese fighter that you were working with, and but now his son is a phenomenal fighter, but he's only fighting in China.
I was talking about George Foreman's son when he quit on George Foreman's son.
Oh, George Foreman.
He was 18-0 with 17 knockouts. He just quit, him and his dad. I don't know what happened. Something happened. He just quit. Maybe he'll come back.
Oh,
maybe
now
he'll come back. It's a second comeback. Second coming.
Maybe, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brent, so much. We appreciated having you here at prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media, and phenomenal stories that you shared about boxing legend George Foreman.
Can we speak after the program's over for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, you take care, Brent. We'll have you back, and I know there's more stories. We'll have you back sometime soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.